1, 2, 3, 4.
Screen time, screen time, screen time, screen time.
It's my screen time too.
Screen time.
Hello, and welcome to It's My Screen Time Too, the podcast where two moms review the best and worst in children's programming, from Netflix reboots and YouTube shorts to Disney classics and Pixar blockbusters. We watch, you listen. Find out what you can tolerate watching for family movie night, what to avoid altogether, and what you'll want to watch alone voluntarily. I'm Katie.
And I'm Deborah.
And I have two kids. Jay, he's 7, and Kenny, he's 4.
And I have 3 kids. Tony is 13, and Libby and Nate are 10. We both like to tell a quick story about how awesome or occasionally awful our kids are, because in addition to being witty and incisive pop culture consumers, we're moms too. Katie, what have your adorable children been up to lately?
So my boys both started Taekwondo this year, and it's been super fun because even though we live in the South, we are not strict sir, ma'am enforcers because ultimately we're both Yankees at heart, right? And
Right.
even though we've been living down here a long time, I still can't stop myself from feeling like a little bit offended when people call me ma'am, even though it's totally normal and it happens all the time. But it's been funny having them in Taekwondo because one of the things they really emphasize from the beginning is that whenever your instructor or any instructor tells you anything, like it's always yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, everything. Stand up, sit down, yes, sir. And it's been fun to watch Kenny, at least, embrace this wholeheartedly. But Jay did his belt test last week to get the next belt up, and it was like a very involved ceremony where he had to do these specific, I'm just going to call them moves because I am an ignorant person. And then like they tested him on his Korean language knowledge and
Cool.
something I didn't know before going to the thing to watch, which was actually kind of cool. He got to break a board.
Nice.
It was really
That's
fun.
awesome.
And I know all you other moms who have kids who do various martial arts are like, oh, board breaking, that's so normal. But for me, like a novice, it was really fun to see.
Cool. Have you watched Karate Kid?
We thought about it. We thought about whether it would hold up and whether there would be a lot of underlying racism to address. I don't know. We haven't done it yet.
We watched it a while ago, years ago, and it's really slow.
Really?
I mean, movies used to move a lot more at a slower pace. I was surprised. I didn't remember that.
Have you seen either alone or with your kids the Jaden Smith remake?
I can't remember. Possibly.
I don't know. I hadn't even considered that one. Obviously, my mind goes to the original right away. It's definitely on the short list of movies we want to expose our kids to this summer.
Yeah.
How about you? What have your kids been up to?
Okay, Mother's Day is old news by now, but last episode that we recorded, Jay was making you something in secret in his bedroom, so I have to give you a Mother's Day update. All my kids made me or gave me nice creations. Tony's was especially thoughtful because he has one of his teachers has like a prize bucket where if I don't know how they earn credits to get prizes, good grades, attendance, that kind of stuff. And he used one of his prizes on me, and he brought me home like a little Bath and Body Works fragrance, which was so thoughtful. I was very touched.
Really sweet. You know, Deborah, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit in the meat of our episode, but I've been thinking a lot about teenage boys and how hard it's going to be to eventually have teenage boys. And it makes my heart happy that you're starting off with a nice one.
Yeah, good. We'll get into it in a little bit, but first let's talk about screen time in the news. The big news of the moment in Screenland is the writer's strike, so obviously we have to cover it. We read an article titled All the Animated Shows That Are Impacted by the WGA Strike by Jamie Lang, published May 9th of this year. on cartoonbrew.com. And it's fascinating to us as outsiders that animation writers aren't necessarily members of the WGA. They can be, like Simpsons writers, but most are members of the Animation Guild tag, which creates an interesting loophole for continued production of animated content. And we're kind of waffling on whether this is good for us or bad for us. It's good for viewers of kids' TV because we might not have the production hiccups the wider industry will have, but it's another sign that animation is relegated to a category of less prestige than non-animated content.
And especially animation for kids, because if you look at this list of shows that are going to be affected by the strike, they're all, what we would call grown-up animated shows.
Yeah, there was one, Exploding Kittens, I hadn't heard of, and my kids have liked playing that card game, and I was like, oh, we should check this out. And then Tony did, and he was like, this is for adults.
Okay. I also thought it was really interesting. I read that in some cases, the Writers Guild encourages its members to take on animation work as a stopgap because that's work that they're allowed to do during the strike to make money, which just feels really competitive and mean-spirited towards the people who actually normally have animation work as their primary source of income.
And scabby, right? It's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of not in keeping with the spirit of a strike. The whole point of a strike is that you don't work and then your employer misses you.
Right.
Just a reminder for listeners that the WGA is striking because they're just not making the money that should be due to them. The streamers and the content owners are keeping all the profits way up at the top. The writers are getting little residual compensation. They're making these like mini writers' rooms for streaming shows that don't guarantee a livable wage. It doesn't guarantee any kind of ongoing employment. It's a terrible situation for the Hollywood writers to be in.
Yeah, and something that we don't often talk about is how much of that system is based on sort of an apprenticeship model. Do you remember when we interviewed Nikki from Santiago of the Seas?
Of course.
Yeah, and
that was one of our big gets.
Yeah, and she was saying that that is how she got to be showrunner for Santiago of the Seas, is that she went through an internship program with Nickelodeon, and that's how they bring up new talent with kind of this apprenticeship model. And it being an internship, obviously that was very formalized, and it sounds like part of the problem with what the WGA is arguing for now is none of that was formalized in the wider television world. And so they're just doing away with this primary pipeline for encouraging new talent, which is really sad. Really sad for all of us viewers who value good content.
Yeah, totally.
All right, I guess we can get off our pro-union soapbox. I did just want to address one other little thing that's going on in the news right now, because we covered it in a Screen Time in the News a while back when HBO Max, which might now just be Max, I'm a little confused as to whether when that turnover is happening, but we talked about how they were purging some content, R.I.P. Esme and Roy, and Westworld, and some really big titles from their catalog to save money. Well, now, lo and behold, Disney is doing the same on both Disney Plus and Hulu. And because we're just being encouraged to be a little bit more blasé about the current state of the streaming wars and our general media landscape, it's made far less of a splash. I took a little look at this list of shows that are going away, and to be honest, the only one that meant anything to me was the original Willow movie.
Oh,
which I loved as a child, and I have tried to watch with my boys, and they have been singularly unimpressed. So I guess even though I am abstractly sad that it is going away, it doesn't ultimately affect my life all that much.
That's good.
Had you heard about these changes at all?
I did hear something on the Daily Zeitgeist about like so Disney's merging with like Hulu and they wanted Hulu to drop some of the more mature content. I might have the companies mixed up.
No, I mean, Disney already owns majority stake in Hulu, I believe. And the
Okay.
question is if they're going to take over what remaining stake is owned by, oh, now I'm getting over my skis, Comcast, I think.
Okay.
But if they were to assume that 100% ownership, what would that mean for the Disney brand? Blah, 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 blah. We don't know where that stands right now. I think the thing that I did not consider with the whole HBO Max purge when we talked about it first of all is that these companies could easily be getting rid of these titles on their own platform to sell them to show, say, syndicated on TBS or
Mm.
on one of the premium cable movie channels. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be permanently gone. They're just going to try and look at it as a more profitable source of revenue than it is just sitting on their streaming platform, which, while it is kind of crass and crappy, I guess doesn't make things feel quite as dire.
That's good. That's a good perspective to keep.
All right. Well, I guess we can move on to the main event. I am super excited to talk about this with you, Deborah. Today we are talking about American Born Chinese, which is a brand new action comedy series. All 8 episodes dropped on Disney Plus on May 24th, 2023. The series is based on the 2006 graphic novel of the same name by Gene Yang, written for television by brothers Charles Yu and Kelvin Yu. Okay, so I did a little Wikipediaing. Wikipedia, that's a verb, right?
Yep.
Works for me. So Charles Yu has written 2 fantastic sounding novels that I read the brief summary of and I wanted to go out and read them immediately, called How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe and Interior Chinatown. His brother Kelvin Yu is an actor who's kind of one of those hey it's that guy in a ton of TV shows. He's also a writer. Most notably for me on his IMDb page was Bob's Burgers. Speaking of animated shows that will be affected by the writer's strike. Okay, so brief summary of the show. Lots of threads going on, but if I had to try, I would say adventure awaits average teenager Jin Wang when the Chinese transfer student he's unwillingly tasked to orient enlists him in a battle between Chinese mythological gods. It's a coming of age story with kung fu. What's not to love? We picked this because the book came out right around when we were in library school, and it was a super hot pick for a lot of the classes in our library school program because it has 2 things that librarians love: graphic novels and multiculturalism. I was always curious, but it was never assigned in any of my classes, and I'm on the record as being wishy washy about graphic novels, so I never checked it out. Also, I saw very few Oscar movies this year, but I did see Everything Everywhere All at Once, so I was super excited for the reunion on this show of Michelle Yeoh, Ki Hoi Kwan, and Stephanie Su. How about you, Deborah? Had you read this book in library school for a class?
No, but it's a book that my kids have checked out from the library and read. I haven't read it myself, but I recognized the title when I saw a little blurb in some publication about the Pax actress, Poppy Leo. This was like months ago when I added it to our watch list, and she plays Princess Iron Fan, who I don't think was in either of the episodes that we watched.
Yes.
But
Speaking of which, since we are recording this on Thursday, listeners, and the show just came out on Wednesday, we just watched the first 2 episodes. Episode 1, What Guy Are You?, which ran around 45 minutes, and episode 2, A Monkey on a Quest, that was more in the 30-minute range, which is typical for the rest of the episodes in the season. We're going to try going through the episodes one by one before moving on to our general impressions. So, how about the pilot episode?
in episode 1, high school student Jin Wong is just trying to get through his day of school. His parents don't get him. His ESL shadow doesn't get it. The cool kids are mean to him, and his crush doesn't reciprocate. And then there's this whole other like fantasy monarchy quest for the staff alternate universe plot that's going along too.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong in my memory, but like that is how the series opens, with
Mm-hmm.
dropping you into this fantasy world and this conflict between the Monkey King and his son.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the episode is just Jin in high school, right? Do we ever come back to the Monkey King that episode?
No, I don't think so. Because I watched them like just right in a row, so they kind
Exactly.
of blurred together.
So the two worlds are very distinct, and it is not clear from the pilot episode how they connect at all.
Mm-hmm. So in episode 2, we learn that Jen's ESL shadow is actually like the monkey prince, and he and his mother are trying to establish this new life in America to get away from the father who like wants the staff that he has. And then in the high school world, the high school's culture club, who is mostly made up of Asian students, they want Jin to make a statement about a meme video that somebody made spoofing him as a character from a 90s sitcom that has recently been rebooted. And the tension there is it's totally racist, but is it ironic racist and funny, or is it offensive? And poor Jin, he just wants to fit in, and he doesn't want the attention that the culture club is like foisting upon him. That was way more than one sentence, but it's a complicated show.
It is complicated, and it should be said that this is like a leap in plot complexity from a lot of the shows that we watch, because it is centered on a high school student, and that's not often territory that we stray into.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We will try to tackle this as straightforwardly as possible. So you said that your kids had read the book, but you had not. I
Mm-hmm.
went above and beyond for this episode, and I bought the book and I read it before I watched so I could be a little bit more informed.
Oh, wow.
I already said that I'm not generally a fan of graphic novels, but I thought this was a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have any of that like cartoony overwrought violence, which is often something that I do not like about graphic novels. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't too like up its own behind about its artistic merits. Like it was actually telling a story, which I appreciated as well. But it is three very distinct storylines that do not get woven together until the very end of the book. So I was super curious to see how they were gonna make that into a television show. My first thought was, are they going to do it sort of like an anthology show where each episode is dealing with its own distinct plot line, and then at the end we weave them together? But it was immediately clear that's not what they were doing, as we said, with the pilot episode starting off in the monkey kingdom and then going to the human high school. So that was very long-winded, but having not read the book, did you have any specific expectations going into it?
I did not know anything about it other than the title going in. I do love a story where it's like the parents have immigrated here, the kid is kind of caught between like the parents' background and like wanting to assimilate and fit in. And I do enjoy that tension. Like Jhumpa Lahari's books really do that very well. So when poor Jin, the school principal brings this new ESL kid and asks Jin, not asks, tells him that because Jin is Chinese, which Jin is not, Jin is American, that he's going to have to take this like dorky kid around the school day with him. Like I gasped because I was like, that's got to be your worst nightmare, Jin. He's just trying to fit in and try to be on the soccer team with all these kids who like are totally insensitive and make fun of him, and his mom won't buy him the clothes that he wants. So I liked it from the start.
In contrast with the book, it's very much a story of what it's like to be the only minority in a very white high school experience.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the show, they have the culture club. Jin's former best friend is Indian. So, like, there are other non white faces. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a nice reminder to the viewing public that, like, racism isn't just fixed with numbers.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I should say Jin's story and also the father's story, because the father is like trying to like move up the ladder at his corporate office job, which is a whole B plot line that was introduced in episode 2 that we didn't include in the summary, but that was interesting to me too. I wasn't very into like the Monkey King saga because I'm not a big fantasy person. I didn't not like it, but I wasn't super into it.
Yeah, it was by far the less successful. There were elements of it that were more successful in the second episode. So there is a really fun kung fu sequence between the exchange student and like a pig demon. And it has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that like goofy kind of slapstick style of kung fu, which I'm not a connoisseur of kung fu films. So if I'm going to watch it, I want it to be the funny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a successful integration of the Monkey King plotline. But on the whole, again, it's super unclear how it has anything to do with the high school Earth plotline, even when they try to make the connection explicit. And we'll get into it later, but it just looks terrible. All right, what about the characters? Should we talk about Jin first?
Sure.
What did you think about Jin?
I liked him as a character. I liked the actor that played him. I thought he did like he's cute and you empathize with him, and yet he's kind of socially awkward and you're like rooting for him the whole time. And then he makes some decisions that aren't the best decisions, but you're still going along with it. He's a very likable character.
I think he does exasperated outrage, not outrage, exasperated embarrassment really well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think he did a really good job of portraying just how irrational teenagers' actions and attitudes can be,
Mm-hmm.
and portraying whatever internal logic is going on in Jin's mind that might seem pretty absurd to
Mm-hmm.
adults watching from the outside. Oh, he was hard to like for me, and maybe that's just because I've been thinking about Teenagerhood a lot lately, and I don't know how I'm going to deal with that business.
You have a little while to prepare, so that's good. I just want to talk about this is kind of jumping ahead to like writing, but I thought that the jokes were constructed perfectly. Like there's this scene where he's in a changing room and there's something funny written on the back of a sweatshirt his mom made him try on, and it's like revealed at the end of the scene. I laughed out loud several times, and I thought, speaking of raising a teenage boy, like the mom, his mom is so perfect because she's like nagging him about whether or not his underwear is clean, like don't get into fights at school when she's dropping him off, like telling him what to eat. I thought that that was very true to real life.
Okay, that's good to know. I loved all of Jin's interactions with his little high school crush. I found their banter to be across the board super sweet. What about the exchange student? What were your feelings on his character? And I'm sorry I forgot his name and I didn't write it down.
I liked him too. Like Jin points out, he's like super confident. He doesn't understand why Jin is so insecure, and he just like blows right past that and tries to get Jin to like ask the girl out and call out the soccer bullies. So that was fun.
Yeah, I loved that extra dimensionality because it was a character that could have been just like this drip that was hanging on Jin all the time, clueless about what was expected of him in an American high school environment. And instead of going that way, they gave him this extra element of confidence, and it really did a lot to turn the character around and not make it so you were like just constantly feeling sorry for Jin.
Right.
Can we talk for a minute about Ki Hoi Kwan, the character from the 90s sitcom?
Mm-hmm.
So is it like supposed to be a Steve Urkel thing or a Belky Bartakamus thing? Like, what are they parodying? What are they parodying other than like generalized xenophobia?
I thought it was Perfect Strangers
Okay,
with
okay,
Balky. That's what that that was how I interpreted it.
okay. It'll be interesting to see if that character gets more developed moving forward because it definitely is one of their marquee actors in the cast. So if all he was there for is to provide the context for a bullying meme, that would make me sad.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the character design of the monkeys?
Like their faces,
Yeah.
like the prosthetics.
It's very Planet of the Apes,
Yeah.
which was an interesting choice. I don't know. It makes it really hard to take what's going on seriously, I guess.
I almost would have preferred like masks, which I know then they can't do facial expressions. But yeah, it kind of takes you out of it because it's so silly looking.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how they manage to weave all this together. I'm skeptical at
Mm-hmm.
this point. I don't know where else I'm going to fit this complaint other than just putting it in right here, so I'm going to do it. So you already mentioned that the Monkey King and his son are fighting over this magical staff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at one point, the Monkey King's son has stolen the staff, and this goddess that is guiding him, played by Michelle Yeoh, flawless as usual, shrinks it down to like the size of a toothpick. And she tells the Monkey King's son, protect this tiny toothpick thing. And he's like, oh, yes, of course, I'll put it somewhere safe. And he sticks it in his ear. And I am sorry. That just is going to have to cross it off my list of possible shows to watch with my children forever.
Because you think they're going to imitate that?
Yes. Yep. I think they're going to
Okay.
be hiding things in their ears, and it's going to be ER visits from here to eternity.
Oh, haven't. I feel like I nagged like nothing in your ear bigger than your elbow.
Unless
So
you're a
much.
monkey prince. I don't know. It just seemed like a remarkably silly and unnecessary touch.
That's true. Kids, don't stick toothpicks in your ears.
Ugh. Yes, obviously.
That's what it
don't.
looked like.
It really did. Ugh. All right. Any other characters you particularly loved or hated?
Ooh, the boss, the dad's boss. Gosh, what's that actor's name? He's also in Somebody Somewhere this season.
I don't think I've
On
gotten there
Max.
yet.
Okay.
He is also one of those hey, it's that guys. But he does the whole just oblivious privilege very well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we talked about the toothpick staff. Let's talk some more about the look of the show. Ooh, man. The visual distinction between the Monkey Kingdom and the real world. You know, Kevin and I went to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very clear that Disney devoted a lot of their special effects budget to this movie because it looked good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that American Born Chinese is a TV show, so it's never going to have the effects budget of a movie. But whew, man, the effects were rough. For whatever reason, the Monkey King was like shape shifting in this opening scene between a variety of different animals. And as far as I can tell, that was a totally unnecessary bit of CGI trickery that looked terrible.
I thought that the like movements, because it's supposed to be kind of like crouching tiger, hidden dragon type choreography. I thought it was not like cinematic level, which I didn't expect it to be.
And yes, of course, like choreographing a vivid and beautiful fight scene in that like heightened reality style presents its own bit of challenge. Why on earth would you also be like, oh, let's turn him into a tiger? Like, what?
Yeah. I don't think I hated it as much as you did, but yeah, you're right. It wasn't good.
It was a really poor introduction to the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I were a kid watching that with my like video game expectations of how effects are supposed to look, I would be immediately put off.
Yeah.
So we talked about the monkey makeup and how Planet of the Apes it looks. I almost wish they had gone with like practical effects for this mythical world instead of this like washed out red coloring that they've made everything. I don't know. How did that work for you?
I guess I wasn't watching it as critically as you were. It didn't I was just trying to like figure out more like what is going on with this. It didn't grab me just because I love a Saved by the Bell setting way more than I love a fantasy setting.
Did you, and I'm sure you did because you watched the trailer, like you knew that like this wasn't going to be the whole thing. Like you weren't going to be stuck in like Monkeyland for all of it.
Right.
Well, that's a relief at least. What did you think of the kung fu fight scenes? We got that one between the Monkey King and his son in the first episode, and then we got the one good one between the exchange student and the pig in the second episode. I think that might be it.
Yeah, I think that's
there's
right.
another one between the Monkey King and his son in the second episode, right? Where they shrunk down the staff to shove it in his ear. All right, so 3 fight scenes. What did you think?
I thought that the choreography was fine and it provides a little bit of action in an otherwise like kind of just a regular old high school setting. How does it compare to the book and the visual representation in the book?
Yeah, the fight sequences happen in a world outside of the high school sequences and they don't overlap. So you don't get any of that funny like, oh, what if kung fu in the school cafeteria? But it is still fun and like very comic booky. Again, like I said before, it doesn't feel overly violent. Everyone feels like a cartoon character. There's not much worry about actual harm being done, I guess, in a non-cartoony way. I was worried that it was going to be a little too kung fu heavy, like too fight heavy in an attempt to like suck in the teenage boy audience. And I didn't think that was a problem at all.
Right.
Did you have any thoughts on the music?
The John Bon Jovi scene.
Okay. Talk about John Bon Jovi.
So Jin's parents are portrayed as very much like hardworking immigrant types. The mom listens to like Chinese vocal music in the car when she's driving him around. But then the dad has this scene where he's like escaped to his car in the parking lot at work to just like take a break from the stress of the water cooler talk. And like his boss finds him just absolutely rocking out to some John Bon Jovi classic. I thought that was super fun.
It was really fun and a nice insight into this character that otherwise has, up to this point, just seemed like kind of a pushover drip of a guy.
Yeah.
How familiar are you with Bon Jovi? It's not really an artist that I know very well.
I mean, I can recognize him. I don't know a lot of lyrics.
Yeah, I think we were maybe just a touch too young. All right, length and structure. I feel like I have the secret line on this, but having read the book. Did you ever find yourself asking why this is a TV show and not a movie?
I didn't. The one thing that bugged me slightly is like just scrolling through the episodes. They kind of vary in length a little more than I like, which I know the beauty of streaming is that episodes can be however long they need to be, but I don't really want them to stray too far from like a 30-minute or 45-minute average.
Yeah, that 45-minute initial episode, like I can see it being necessary to orient you in these two different worlds, especially to give you a sense of what's going on in the Monkey Kingdom, because we don't have any reference points from our lives to mirror that. But I'm not sure it was successful at that because I found myself still confused about what was going on there. So in that sense, it wasn't a successful use of those additional 15 minutes.
Did you think it would have been better as a movie? I mean, we have only watched the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I feel like my comments make it sound like I really didn't like this. And I did. I guess I just have to give it some room to run with the changes it's made from the book. I think if they had faithfully adapted the book, there would be no way to do it as a series. Like, you would need the time constraints of a movie to eventually put those storylines together in a satisfying way. My worry with it being a series is they're just going to make it into an growing pains awkward high school show, which I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it should be more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, reserving judgment. Were you able to compare this to any movies or TV shows for grown-ups?
I thought a lot about Hulu's Reboot, the one with Paul Reiser and Judy Greer and Keegan
I
Michael
never watched
Key.
it, but I heard good things. Didn't it get canceled?
Oh, probably, but it's worth watching the first season anyway. It was really clever. It's like a TV critic's dream show because it's so meta. And I thought they're doing the same thing in this with the tension of that 90s reboot and like the girls in the locker next to Jin who are like, no, don't let him see it. And then one is like, it's okay, it's ironic. And he has to pretend like it's okay. And like they've got to deal with the fact that not that long ago, people were still being racist and they're still racist and life is really hard. I mean, there's just like so many microaggressions. There was like I don't know, it just all to me just like adds up and adds up and adds up to my empathy for Jen.
It would be so complicated to remake. Like, think about the show that they are parodying. If, like, you were to reboot that now, when, like, so much a part of the quote unquote humor back then was explicitly racist. Like, how do you walk
Mm-hmm.
that back for a reboot?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of like what the Paul Reiser reboot on Hulu is. Like, he's always making these just terrible joke proposals in the writer's room and like just so cringy because like they have these like old guard TV writers sitting across the table from like all these new woke, for lack of a better term, kid writers. It's very good. It's very good.
Half an hour or hour?
I think it's half an hour.
Okay, good. We have an opening for one of those.
Okay, yeah, you should give it a try.
All right, awesome.
You'll probably hate it since I really liked it.
That doesn't always happen, just reliably most of the time.
Yeah. Oh gosh, also it also reminded me a little bit of Mr. Robot because there's like this whole existential background battle going on in the background that I just couldn't get into.
It also reminded me of like a high concept show that was ultimately disappointing that we watched last year. Did you watch Shining Girls, which with Elizabeth Moss?
No.
It was based on a book that I also hadn't read, but essentially it was like the details of this woman's life kept changing, and she would
Hmm.
be the only one to know that they just had. Like, she would leave for work in the morning from her apartment 201, and she would come back to find that she actually lived in 301. So she would go to
Hmm.
the wrong apartment first. And it was all sorts of like little things. Like, all of a sudden her desk wouldn't be her desk, and whoever was sitting there would be like, "What do you mean? Do you even work here?"
Oh, weird. I don't always like shows like that.
Yeah, it was not successful. We made it through, but I would not recommend it. So so you might love it. Did you cast the gritty HBO reboot?
Okay, this one was a little tough because I felt like it was really well cast. I mean, I would like to see the show continue, but possibly with like a new throwback show, if that makes sense, every time, because I would kind of like to revisit my old favorites, but I know that they're problematic. So I would like to have them revisited in this way. So, like, a Saved by the Bell, very special episode type one, and like the Urkel one,
Family
Family
Matters.
Matters. Yeah. Yeah, so I couldn't really come up with a good alternate cast because I thought it was so well done. I mean, you can't replace Michelle Yeoh with anyone else.
No, you can't.
How about you?
I only cast one role. I only cast Jin
Okay.
because, again, I've had teenagerhood on the brain. And I was thinking, teenagers get a pass for their self absorption because they're
Mm-hmm.
teenagers and they're going through all sorts of things and learning how to be fully fledged humans.
Mm-hmm.
It would take a special grown up actor to do some of those things and still elicit audience sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I found the perfect actor, and that is Bowen Yang,
Oh, that is good.
who I
Yeah, he
don't
would be
feel has
good.
had his true star turn yet as much as I loved him in Fire Island.
Yeah, that was really good.
Really, what I was thinking of when I did the imaginary cast, I don't watch much SNL, but I did see this clip of school kids doing presentations about insects. And Bowen Yang is one of the school kids, and his insect is the daddy longlegs. And he just goes off. And it is so funny. If you have not seen it, please do yourself a favor.
Okay, perfect.
Do you think it was better when we were kids?
We were watching Well, I was watching Perfect Strangers and thinking it was pretty funny. So, no, I don't think it was better when we were kids.
Yeah, agreed. I'm trying to think of portrayals of Asian Americans that we had in children's media at the time.
All of them I can think of were pretty problematic.
Hmm. Would you ever watch this alone voluntarily?
I would, but I'm hoping that Tony will watch it with me because he's read the book and he was interested in it.
I think we're going to finish it up during grown up screen time, which is a good segue into 10 seconds on whether or not this is good for our kids. I was kind of joking with the comment about the toothpick ear staff moment. I do feel like this is not going to be a hit for the under 10 set. I almost wouldn't even attempt it with my boys.
It's a little too nuanced and complicated for that age, I think. I think my kids can definitely watch it, but younger kids, it's not the best.
Yeah, they're not going to connect at all with Jin's stories in school at that point, and there aren't
Mm-hmm.
enough of those slapstick fight moments to make up for it. So
Mm-hmm.
I would steer clear for the younger set, but I think tweens and young teens are fine.
Mm-hmm.
Ratings?
I'm giving it a 4.5.
Despite the visual stuff, I really liked it. I'm looking forward to watching the rest. I am going to go for 4.
Thanks for listening to this episode of It's My Screen Time Too. If you enjoyed our show today, please share it with someone you think might enjoy it too. If you like our voices and perspectives, try Spock Talk, our new podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyScreenTime2 or send an email to myscreentime2@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your show or movie suggestions, article recommendations, or general comments about the show. Our website is myscreentime2.com. Our theme music was composed and performed by me and my adorable children, and our podcast is produced by Katie. Tune in next time for more real talk about the movies and TV we watch with our kids because we have to and sometimes because we like to. Bye.
Bye.
Screen time, screen time, screen time, screen time.
My screen time.